Okay, sound, lights, action. Hello again. This is the ED penny slot that I showed you all in bits, and I'm now very pleased to say we have it back from the blacksmith, who's very good with micro soldering. As you can see, he soldered the exhaust stubs on here, the inlet manifold on there, with nothing more than a 10-pound hammer, a pair of pincers and a red hot forge. He's very good. So you've seen this in bits, but this is how it looks when it's all nicely put together with the original 10 by 5 maybe prop. Fuel tank is actually about 12 mil, I measured that. Compression adjusted, as I said before, like that. Bit strange, but it works. And ta-da! There's the contra piston. Proud of the liner by a mil or two, so I think it's got a bit of compression. Needle valve cut off, and I've discovered how that works. When you turn it there, it exposes a wee hole in the fuel pipe below the venturi. That prevents the suction and it stops the engine very quickly. So that's stopped, that's going. Plain bearing, long stroke, we've said all that. Very easy to start because it's side port, that's the transfer passage. And it's 75, 76 years old, and I think it's going to run. I'm sure it's going to run. The blacksmith said it will. I thought it might be instructive just to compare it with this being the first ED made with the very latest ED made. This being not quite a prototype, but the first of a run, I think, an ED12, so it's the same size, believe it or not, as him. So this is the first and the latest ED. It's a glow, of course, but it also can be a diesel. We've got two Venturas, a slightly narrow one for diesel, so it's got the wrong one on, and a slightly wider one for glow, but it runs very well on that as a glow anyway. So this is long stroke, boom, 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 boom. This is very short stroke. This revs probably up to 20,000. That's 9,000, we'd be pushing that. Obviously they look very different, and they are. Double ball race, plain bearing, front intake, rear exhaust, so-called fire engine. The Venturi there is not a spray bar, but it's a sort of pipe with a hole in the end of it, which you might be able to see, I don't know, it seems to work very well. Schnurler porting obviously in there, ABC liner, aluminium, brass, chrome, aluminium piston, brass, chrome liner, nice bearings, look, they just move under the weight of the piston. That's steel liner. The diesel head is quite interesting in that the contra piston is that thing. It doesn't sit in the liner anymore in this machine, and quite a few modern ones now, it sits in the head. And this contra piston actually sits in, it's raining, Clive, sits in an O-ring, so you can push it in quite freely, but it's a nice action. It doesn't stick. Very nice. So that's the two engines. Just as a little postscript, this was found in a barn by a friend of mine, belonged to a chap called Richard, who is alas no longer with us. But this engine is going back home, so to speak, to fill the last gap in the collection of every ED engine ever made by or belonging to the guy who now owns ED engines. So I hope you enjoy this, Alan, and thanks for Tony, and I hope Richard approves of the final home of his engine. So there we are. Goodbye.